Good afternoon, everyone. We are now live in BIM Worldwide and BIM Philippines Facebook page for BIM Management ISO 19650 using Plannerly. Inviting you to like and share our live stream, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Inviting you to join us in BIM Philippines Facebook page and a LinkedIn group. So we also have BIM Philippines in LinkedIn. Okay, and please do comment down your full name slash course name for us to know you better. Okay. Okay, I'll be adding Sir John Mark as my co-host. Good afternoon.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, in a few minutes, we are about to begin for BIM management to ISO 19650 with a planner Lee. Okay, so let me share my screen once more. Inviting you to join. We are also live in YouTube with BIM Worldwide. Okay, please follow Plannerly, our friends in Plannerly. If you're into digital creativity, inviting everyone to join our sister group. It's Digital Creatives Philippines. Also, if you're into architecture, engineering, and construction, yeah, and yes, of course, building information modeling, inviting you to join us in BIM Philippines. Yes, please invite your friends to join us there. Help us reach 10,000, a milestone of 10,000 members. And yes, we do have a Facebook page as well. Please like and follow our page to be notified of our upcoming live stream trainings, such as what's happening now. BIM management with a planner Lee. Oh, okay. In addition, lastly, we are also in LinkedIn. It's BIM Philippines. So once more, in a few minutes, about to begin BIM management to international standards organization 19650 using Plannerly. Once more, please invite your friends, colleagues to join us. Okay, so in addition, we'd like to thank you, everyone, for helping us reach a milestone of 2,000 members on our Facebook group with Enscape users worldwide. So shout out to Bjorn Witterberg. I saw him last night, I think. He's saying we're about to reach 2,000. And yes, finally, we have reached 2,000 members. Okay. And to inform everyone, we are also live. Once more, we are also live in Twitch, in YouTube. We are live in three different channels: Autodesk Community Philippines, BIM Worldwide, Digital Creatives Worldwide. Okay, so yep, we are also live in three different channels in YouTube and in Twitch. Okay, so without further ado, joining us this afternoon, or I think it's evening, right? It's evening in this time zone. Yep, let's give a warm Filipino welcome. Kamusta? Ayan, welcome to Clive Jordan.
Hello. Hey, everyone. How's it going? Yes, it's evening for me, but it doesn't matter the time of day. We love talking BIM at any time. Absolutely.
Okay, so yep, so honored and yeah, so very much excited to have Clive. Yep, in this live stream. So yep, we are open for questions. Once more, we are open for questions, comments, and suggestions. Probably yes. In addition, this is also my first time meeting Clive. So yep, we wanted this to be raw and authentic, Clive. That's why we preferred no script
No polish.
for this,
I
yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
for this live streams. Yeah, and I guess my first question would be, you have a different accent. It's not American sounding. So can you share to us?
Yeah, even though I go back to my hometown in England, they wonder where I'm from. So I have traveled quite a lot, and the accent has changed. I've lived in lots of different places, implementing BIM around the world. But my home is Southern California now, mainly because of the tech scene. That's kind of the reason that brought me here. But it's also quite nice weather as well, so I've got no complaints about that. But I'm British. I was born in England. I spent most of my time in and around London, and then left about 15 years ago. So that's probably why the accent has changed. And I now have 3 children that were all born in California. So yeah, they're going to have an even more twisted accent than I do.
Clive, are you an engineer or an architect? Can you share us to that
I'm
as
an
well?
engineer, yeah, civil engineer by background, and yeah, engineering ran through the whole family. So my father was a marine engineer, and my brother a chemical engineer, myself a civil engineer, and yeah, now applying all of those engineering concepts, but with technology. So that's where it's the desire to do all of those cool things, but at a scale that a line of code can do. And that's what excites me now. Yeah.
Yep, because in addition, to inform you, Clive, we are also live streaming to various student organizations in their
Okay.
Facebook pages. So definitely, they're also wondering, you're curious on what your career path has been. So I'm seeing you also went to Graphisoft. Can you share to us your journey there as well?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So I was in construction to start with after doing an engineering degree, and I was always interested in technology. And Graphisoft approached, and it was a perfect opportunity. And in the email, they actually wrote, it was about 4 or 5 lines, and they wrote the word unique. And this story, the unique story, came across twice in my career, but this is the first one. Maybe we'll get to the second one. They wrote the word unique 3 times in the space of about 3 and a bit sentences. And I thought that must be something that I want to go and have a look at. And it ended up being the R&D division creating what became Vico software, the first 4D and 5D integrated platform. So I had the privilege to be one of the founding team members of Vico software, that in the end we actually purchased from Graphisoft as Nemetschek bought Graphisoft,
Mhm.
and then we were purchased by Trimble later on. So that's the Graphisoft shimmy. Yeah. But
Okay, so yeah, yeah. I initially got confused. So your presence in Trimble also came from Graphisoft
there you go.
through
Yep.
Vico.
That's the connection. Yeah, a long time in the 3D, 4D, and 5D space, really kind of pioneering that market and creating that commercial application that, yeah, is still around today. But there are so many other 4D and 5D applications, and integrating all of that great data that you can get from a BIM model. So, yeah, that was our goal, was always to streamline the whole workflow so that if you create a fantastic BIM, then you can take quantities and do calculations and use those calculations in estimating and in scheduling as well. So you get a 4D sequence at the same time, cash flow, resource histograms, all of that great stuff. And if you move a wall and make it longer, the quantities will change. It will update the cost. It will update the time. So that principle has always been a really, really, I've been a very like geeking out on it, very nerdy when it comes to that type of application. Yeah.
And yeah, in addition, a lot of our friends also here, yeah, would like to be like you as well, an entrepreneur. Please share to us your journey, how Plannerly was created. I from the look of you, we can sense the enthusiasm, the excitefulness with Plannerly.
Yeah, it has been a journey. So the first incarnation was actually called LOD Planner. So when we first established the company, it was trying to solve that challenge of how do you plan for a model before you have it? How do you agree on how much detail, how much development, how much definition, how much accuracy, how much information, how much do you need at certain points in time? So we were trying to solve that challenge. And what ended up happening is we created a company about the challenge rather than about the solution. And hence why now Plannerly is all about planning early. So that's the subtle play on the name, is don't plan late, but plan early. And if you can plan early, then you can avoid all of those challenges, the additional cost and waste and rework. And yeah, it's a big passion, because I think that it's not a little bit of my life, but a lot of my life, where I really look at lean and how you can optimize to remove waste. And from my perspective, the combination of using technology and in early planning, you can eliminate a huge amount of waste. Making it fun does help as well. So we try to make it a little bit fun along the way as well.
Who thought the idea of the name Plannerly?
It was a group effort. So the team, it was kind of a funny brainstorming activity that you always go through, but we didn't want to deviate too much from the planning. So we were LOD Planner before, and then actually you only need to switch a couple of letters around and you get to Plannerly. The concept of planning early and that concatenation, that grouping of the two. And also there's a whole bunch of new tech startups that were putting LY on the end of things, and it just seemed to work. So it's a little play on the word. Sometimes people find it a tongue twister unless you actually describe plan early. Plan early is much easier to say when you know how it's been defined. So yeah, that was a little journey, but it was the whole team. We were brainstorming together, and it was a big thumbs up from everyone at the same time.
And we're starting to know Clive more with this question. What's your any hobbies, or what burns your time, your spare time? Any hobbies or something you're at aside from BIM and Plannerly?
I love playing tennis. I love playing golf. I have 3 children that keep me entertained as well. We go camping and enjoy time with the family. And actually, right now, I have all 3 children myself and a full schedule. So there's limited time for too much golf. But one thing I would say is that you can make time. So one of the things that I've realized, the difficult way, the hard way, is making time for those types of things for our team. And now we actually enjoy a golf day nearly every month, and shave out that time so that we can spend some time that's outside of work and just talking about family and enjoying our time, that, rather than being head down and just talking about work. You do find me bringing up work a little bit sometimes on the golf course, but yeah, not often.
What are their ages? Are they all girls or boys?
I have one youngest girl. She's nearly 5, and then I have a 9 and 11-year-old, 2 boys. 2 boys and a girl. Yeah, they're fun ages, all of them, for lots of different reasons. But
I have two girls, 1 13 and 1 7. So
cool. So yeah, so you completely identify with that range. Yeah, I've loved seeing them more through the pandemic as well, because they've been around so much more. It's been vying for Zoom time, and people want to use like my office for their meetings or recording something. It's been pretty fun having a lot more of the crew around. So yeah, I'll be sad to see everyone back to normal. At the same time, as you said, the pandemic has thrown fuel on the digital transformation as well. So it's been really something that, with the silver lining, if you can, I like to always look for a silver lining, and knowing that it's been a boost to people adopting BIM and to actually implementing it in a very solid way has been something of a byproduct is a good thing.
Yeah. So I think the pandemic made us more closer, and from my daughter's perspective, I have seen them appreciate what my work is actually. So you get to know what I'm doing, and I'm happy. My 13-year-old now appreciates CAD. She's actually teaching CAD as well.
Oh, very
Okay.
cool. Very cool. So,
Yep.
there's a book that I used to read my children, and it's called "What Does Daddy Do?" Have you heard of that book? And it's basically she sees her daddy go away, and
Yeah.
then they think of all of these things when he's away. What does daddy do? And so now, they know what daddy does a lot more of. They all of my kids are actually wanting to get on the app as well, and wanting to help out and wanting to do testing and things like that, which is really cool. Really cool.
And a lot of some of our also students here are curious on your title. It's fighter. I'm sure you're always asked with this tagline. Mind sharing what fighter of evil
Of evil
BIM is?
BIM.
It sound Star Warish.
Well,
It sounds very Star Wars.
yeah. So part of it is just the principle of, if there's evil BIM happening, it's wasteful, it's repetitive, it's something that really adds cost and adds time. And so anything that you can do to fight the evil BIM, and maybe just switching it around, and actually we're more about doing what's called smart lean BIM. That's our tagline as well. It's the principle of doing the right BIM at the right time, by the right people and for the right reasons. And the principle, if you do that, you are naturally fighting evil BIM. You imagine if an owner has just read about BIM online and says, I would like some BIM. In effect, that's evil BIM, because it causes this cascading effect of everyone jumping around and saying, I've got to do BIM, I've got to impress the owner. But actually, the owner hasn't defined exactly what they need. So there's more BIM happening than maybe needs to happen, and for the wrong reasons. So that whole kind of principle of, if you can fight those, and if you can actually hit the root cause of some of those, you'll be able to have smart lean BIM implemented rather than evil BIM. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah, because some are thinking you may probably be referring to a specific organization who's
That's no, but not knowing exactly which organization you might be referring to, but they are a partner.
Okay, yep. So without further ado, I'm gonna be sharing Clive's screen now. Yes, please do. If you have questions, comments, and suggestions, feel free to comment them down in the chat section. So adding your screen. Without
Perfect.
further ado, it's Plannerly with Clive. So once more, thank you for joining. For giving us the opportunity to hear your message and advocacy, Clive.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, we really appreciate sharing more about what we call smart lean BIM, and the concept of planning early. So plan early. So shall I take it away, or
Yep.
maybe you'd like to?
Yeah, please do take it away. And of course, yes, once more, feel free to our participants, feel free to comment down. Let's kind of make this as a conversation as well. Not a conversation, but with me and Clive. It just so happened we're both on stage. But we are open for your comments. Please do participate. Let's get to know more about the benefits of Lean Bim and Plannerly. Take it away,
Absolutely.
Clive.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So we talked about an agenda and learning outcomes, and we are going to be able to create a BIM execution plan in double quick time using templates that have been curated by people around the world. We're going to be able to define level of information need this concept of BIM scoping and understanding who does what, why they do it, when they do it, how much they do. And then we're going to look at how you contract for that. So you make sure that teams get that done and using an e-signature to make that workflow simple. And then we're going to look at the management side and being able to progress the tasks, sequence to make sure that they're occurring in the right sequence, progress them, and then using verification to check that you did what you said you were going to do in the original contract. So that's the whole workflow. And in a few slides, I'll take you through an introduction as to why that's important, but specifically for the ISO 19650 and really information management and solidifying a base so that people are talking the same language and really getting benefit from BIM rather than wasteful time and unnecessary BIM going on at the same time. I talked about this. This is our tagline, our motto, Smart Lean BIM. We truly believe in this concept because if you can do the right BIM at the right time by the right people, but for the right reasons, you can do some amazing things with BIM. And that's really what this is all about, is getting value from this digital transformation, making sure that we're actually getting value for our customer and gaining efficiencies for our own businesses as well. So it's really important. In the demonstration that I'll talk about in the application, there are 6 main modules. The plan module is where we will look at BIM execution planning, but also exchange information requirements and organizational and project information requirements, understanding how you define those details in a plan, and then looking at a scope for your asset information requirements and understanding when people should do what, contracting for that, scheduling out the sequence of work in the project control side, tracking the progress using Kanban and very lean workflows, and then also checking the model and connecting into BIM 360 or the Autodesk Construction Cloud to be able to verify that what you had originally contracted for will actually get done or has got done. So this is the workflow. Why is it so important? Why should we even care about this? Well, BIM is so broad that you could use the model for so many things, ranging from marketing, winning a project, or understanding how people move through a building, understanding the sun, or maybe analysis on the structure, clashes, quantities, sequencing, simulations, understanding in-place work from a VR, AR, mixed reality in addition, and even right the way through to running the building afterwards, in addition to the design aspects that you can use BIM for. Because there are so many different uses, well, BIM becomes challenging because there are so many different parties that have to deliver that model. You might have appointing parties that require certain BIM. You might have different teams, whether they're architects, engineers, contractors, throughout the design phases, and even through into the construction side as well, developing these models. As you develop a model, if you maybe are developing a model that looks like the one on the left-hand side, when you actually need the one on the right-hand side, then it's going to cause a problem. You have got too little BIM, and it might be too late. But also vice versa. If you have too much BIM too soon, if that much BIM is happening too soon, you will end up in clashes and rework and lots of challenges that cause additional cost and time. So this is the sort of thing that happens when that occurs, when you have too many people not really understanding what they are doing. We have duplicate effort. In this example, we've got the same light fixture being modeled by 4 different contractors, by 4 different teams. And this happens more often than we care to admit, that the architect places some fixture maybe in 2D. Maybe we have an interior designer also on board, the electrical engineer and the contractor, all managing their own models, when if you actually could consolidate a plan early, you could agree who was going to be responsible and model less and have more accurate representation. The challenges that we see, you end up with missing information, you end up with this inaccurate model as you work through understanding which one you should be using, too many clashes. You end up with lots of models with lots of elements in, put them together and end up with thousands of clashes. That's not really beneficial. What we're trying to do is model in the right sequence and run a clash avoidance workflow rather than a clash detection workflow, so that we can, again, reduce the rework. Being able to communicate and understand how to follow this standard workflow is really, really important. So this is where the ISO 19650 standards come in, and it's an information management standard that really helps to outline those concepts and principles for information management, and really aligns everyone's thought process and the understanding of workflow and the appointment process and how to produce and share information. This is so important because if everyone talks the same language, we can eliminate all of that time that we spend in miscommunicating or maybe trying to agree with a project team how to carry BIM out on one project. If you're doing it the same way as that team is on other projects, you can naturally fit and start to be productive a lot sooner on your project. So this is a really powerful opportunity for us. Along with the ISO 19650 process, we have a series of steps in clause 5. And if you unpack those steps, the ISO standards say these are the processes, these are the process maps, and each one of these processes unfolds into a series of steps that help you to ask for a tender, go through, assessment and need, ask for a tender, get a tender response, appoint somebody, mobilize, start to produce information, deliver the information, make sure it's accurate, and then close out a project. So you've got all of these different steps in these 8 different parts of the workflow in accordance with ISO 19650. We also have a list of documents, and those documents range from the organizational information requirements to project, to exchange, to asset, to BIM execution planning. Maybe you're familiar certainly with BIM execution planning if you are using BIM today. But all of these other documents are parts of a workflow that can help an owner, a client, define, or an appointing party define exactly what's required from a strategic perspective through to a project perspective, and then what needs to be exchanged at what point in time. And importantly, from an asset perspective, asset management perspective, they are going to really need to understand exactly what information they need to receive maybe at the handover at the end of the project as well. So as we unpack this ISO 19650, we start to see so many more types and 3-letter acronyms, 4-letter acronyms, delivery plans for the tasks, and the master, which is a summary of all of the task plans from all of the teams that are working on the project, who's responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, and then lots of others as well. This is a long list of potentially slightly differently named documentation than you are potentially used to. But it's incredibly important because it's now being standardized across the globe, and teams ranging from the largest owners to the largest providers of these BIM services and everything in between, all the design and construction in between, are following these standards now. So it's incredibly important. And if you are overwhelmed by that, by the steps in the workflow and the amount of documents, you're not the only one. Don't be feared. And that is precisely why we are here to help. So hold that thought and we'll come back to it. But that's one side of the challenge that we just unpacked. It was how to define really what should happen, because all of the different BIM uses that you could create a model for are very broad and would need a different type of model based on what the use was. And as a consequence, or as a need from that, we have a standard to help us to identify how to work through that and agree on what we need. But we also have software. So we have a great set of software on the list here, where we start with authoring tools, tools to analyze, tools to use the model. But whilst those are fantastic tools, for BIM planning and management, we've been left with these business management tools, which are not dedicated for BIM. There are a couple of issues. One is that they're not precisely focused on our industry. And the other one is that they are slightly disconnected from each other and potentially the rest of the workflow. So what we end up doing in the example of the BIM execution plan is we have a document that we PDF and we send it on an email. And maybe we have different task management solutions in different databases. And we have lots of different ways to manage maybe other tasks as we work through. This is really disconnected. And it was an opportunity that we saw to start to think about that. And we said, well, how can we help? How can we start to think from a BIM manager's perspective? How can we make it easier? How can we make this process more simple? What can we do to help? Well, the first thing that we do is we consolidate all of those really, really powerful parts of the applications that we have historically used into one cloud-based, very simple, fully integrated workflow that is Plannerly. And inside of Plannerly, we have these 6 modules that we saw just slightly earlier introduced. The first 3 are planning modules, and the second 3 on the other side are controlling modules. So if you want to just plan and get to a contract, you could just use maybe the first 3. Or if you were wanting to sequence and wanting to verify that the objectives of that contract for the BIM had been achieved, then you can use the controlling side as well. It's totally up to you, and I'll share with you in the demo whether you use one module or all 6 of them. It's up to you. As we have solved or solving the challenge of consolidating the technology, the other one is, well, what about all of those documents? How do we get those documents created? Luckily, we have access to a resource which is now over 200 teams in way over 30 countries that are reviewing these ISO 19650 documents. These are templates that you can use thanks to all of these people around the world that are managing them for us. And using those templates, you get a selection from these tiles inside of Plannerly when you create a new project, and I'll show you this. And simply by picking the documents you need, you can see them in the browser almost instantaneously for you to start updating. In the scoping side of things, we'll start to see how easy it is to drag and drop to create a scope of work and define your tasks, whether you're using Uniformat or Uniclass or Reba stages or AIA phases. Any way you want to cut and slice all of this information, you can create the scope of work very clearly. And then we can define contracts and get an e-signature on them inside of that same workflow. So without having to use a Word document, PDF, some sort of spreadsheet, some sort of DocuSign or signature tool, and maybe some others for managing the scheduling, etc. You can contain all of that, picking the right modules inside of one single application. So let me pause very briefly before I go into a demo and see if there are any questions just yet, or if there were any things that maybe I should elaborate on from what I've covered so far.
We have a question from Architect Mike. Can Plannerly be part of my common data environment?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the understanding of a common data environment, sometimes there's a misconception that it is just one single place for absolutely everything. Now, that would be a great thing if we could achieve that. But most of the time, they are common data environments known to access exactly what you need from a single place. And that is not, you don't have to put it in many places. So we have been called the common data environment for BIM execution planning, for example. So that's one way of understanding and thinking about this. And we also connect into BIM 360, for example, if you're using BIM 360 to house your model. So you don't have to put the model in lots of different places as well. So there's, yeah, lots of really cool ways to understand how we either can be or can integrate into the common data environment that you are establishing. Oh, I think you're muted. How?
Another question out.
Yeah, I see it. So how
Okay.
how to engage client in AIR at early stage of project? Should this be only on the operation FM? Absolutely, it should be the early stage, not in the late stages, but it's where you start to visualize inside of Plannerly. And I'll show you, we actually have a template for the AIR where you can sit with an owner, and usually in about 45 minutes, you're able to click through all of the potential assets, defining which ones are important, and also the information requirements from that owner's perspective on that inside of the same environment. So I can walk you through that inside the application as well.
Okay, so I guess that's the question for now. Please go
Okay.
ahead.
So let's take a look at the application itself. And let's first of all recap on the modules. So the first part that I'll look at is the plan, the scope, and the contract. I'll set up a project to establish those. And then we'll come back to the schedule, the track, and the verify as well. The plan module is all about simply creating your documentation for your standards and your processes and your contract language. And this can be as simple as creating a BIM execution plan, or it could be documenting meeting minutes. It could be your information protocol and all of the information particulars related to the contract language. It can be really detailed, from a brief right the way through to the detailed requirements for handover. Let's take a look in much more detail about how we create the plan, and then how we use the tools to release only the information that we would like to, when we need to, and then have comments to and fro between team members to get to a published status. So we'll look at work in progress, so things that not everyone can see, through sharing, commenting, and publishing your BIM execution planning and other content as you go. So I'll switch over to using Plannerly. This is Plannerly, and we have different environments set up so you can brand your own work environment so that you can see exactly what you're looking for in your own way. These are what we call workspaces. So you can set up workspaces for different types of projects, and then contain each project. This is an information container for that project with access to as many modules as you would like. Sometimes you might have all of them. Sometimes you might just have the plan and the contract to get to an eSignature. It depends. Maybe here we've got the plan, the scope, and the contract. It's up to you. It's completely flexible as to which modules you would like to use. If I hit the Create Project button, and I'm going to deselect these three modules just so that we can focus on the first three, we'll look at the plan, the scope, and the contract. So planning the documents, scoping out the task requirements, and then getting an e-signature, an agreement signed. I'm simply going to call this new project and hit create. And the first thing that you see when we hit create is we get presented with these templates. They are templates that are following the ISO 19650 workflow from the OIR, so organizational information requirements, through PIR, EIR, BEP, etc. We mentioned that we would create a BIM execution plan, so simply checking the BIM execution plan, and then potentially we would like to have some kind of appointment documentation with the legal language maybe, and we might want to document meeting minutes. So if we were to select those three tiles, the BIM execution plan, the appointment documents, and then also the meeting minutes, it has now created us three tabs along the top, one for each of the documents. So we've got a BIM execution plan tab, we've got the appointment documents, and we've got our meeting minutes. Very, very quickly, we have created a lot of content that we can then customize for our project specifically, whether it's related to how we are going to go through the coordination and clash detection, or how we're going to do 5D cost estimation, and what we're going to deliver in the models, the coordinates, how we're going to follow a coordination workflow, for example, and so on, all of the different project standards that we're going to use, how we're going to name the files, the software versions that we're going to use, the file formats. These are all the types of hardware, how we're going to set up interactive workspaces, deliver the contract strategy, any attachments, variations. All of this is out of the box and a set of templates that are available simply by accessing the product and dragging and dropping from these templates or clicking the button to start. Let me scroll all the way to the top again and roll these up. So if I close up if I just go to just expand the categories, you can see these are the categories and these are the sections, the individual sections. Sometimes we might have missed something. Maybe we would like to include something related to the hierarchy of different types of information requirements. And simply by dragging and dropping from our library, we then create that content inside of our project. And now we see it inside of our project and we have access to it. It's just freely available to us to change. We can update it. We can edit it. We can do anything we like with this. So that's the first step, is using templates to create a BIM execution plan. There's a lot more to this that I can dig into. Maybe we'll have questions, but going through the work in progress, shared and published statuses. So if I was to publish one of these sections, you can see that it publishes and locks it. It would then be available for other team members to see this. And we can continue to go through the commenting workflows. We can copy a link maybe and send it to somebody externally. We can export anything from this as a PDF, Word, Excel exports as we start to get into the scope as well. So really quickly to create some of these documents, and then maybe if we look at the meeting minutes, how we would maybe record meeting minutes, and everything is fully editable in the browser. You can drag and drop a video into the browser. You can drag and drop documents, any special characters, setting up tables, absolutely everything that you would expect to be able to edit inside of the browser, changing obviously the text color to the size of the text, etc. All of this really quick, really easy, and very, very simple to use. So after we've created a BIM execution plan, we need also to have a scope of work to understand who is going to do what at what point in time. So if we move on to the scope, it's going to be defining the task requirement. So let's go to the scope. This is where we start to understand, based on the BIM uses, maybe we would need 3D coordination as one of our purposes. One of in ISO 19650, it really describes needing to have a purpose for every single deliverable. So in this instance, the 3D coordination is our purpose. So we can define all of the requirements related to that 3D coordination. If I hit create now, it will then grab all of those requirements that we have in our template and start to create a list of everything that we might need, the milestone, the information delivery milestone for the project, and then fill in all of the tasks and even create all of the teams and assign the teams and every single checklist item, maybe attachments and notes and everything that's related to that. So now when it starts, it shows us now here all of these tasks. Let's roll it up so that we can see it. What we've done is brought in, and let me just turn off the codes for a second. We can see a responsibility matrix and a master information delivery plan that we've created, and everything from the orientation of the project. Maybe we would like to see that. So maybe I haven't added it yet, but maybe we would like to see the grids, for example. And then also we want to see the levels and scope boundaries. So as I'm defining this, we start to define exactly what needs to happen for this purpose, for 3D coordination. As we build up more and more of these, you'll start to define a series of BIM uses, but potentially within stages or phases of a project. Let me jump back to a project that has got some of this already defined so that we can see in a scope with some stages and phases as well. So inside of here, we actually have quite some number of, for example, the assets required. So we've got the asset register with all of the information requirements as well. We've got different stages with maybe all of the responsibilities for everything from project setup. Looks like we need a pump on that one, to the structural, to the architectural, all of these requirements based on a team carrying out a specific task for a specific purpose at a certain stage on the project. So we've got right the way through all of the different stages as well. If we look at an example here, we have the structural, actually, let's go back. I think I did import this into our project as well. So if I go back to this is our project that we just created, the new project, and I go to the scope, and let's look to see that we have some structural elements. Here we've got the structural stairs, and you can see that included in this task, we have notes, we have attachments, potentially some links out to other things. We have information requirements, we have checklists. So let's take a look by opening that cell. And now we start to see maybe a description, certain things in our checklist, information requirements. So we're needing the compression strength and the concrete finish on both of these elements. So you can see a very granular level as well. We can see a link out to the specification that's required as well. And these are all parts of that task that have been predefined inside of our database that you can then, that as you build your collection of these requirements, you can then use them over time. So that's building out a scope, and that scope actually could be anything from a task or something as simple as a visualization maybe, or a set of drawings. It could be, let's look at the library as well and start to show, it could be conceptual elements. So it could be something like, zones or civil engineering. It could be anything related to the project. And there's a whole it's the largest generic library of this content that you could then use and start to drag and drop into your project to define exactly what you need for this specific purpose or whichever purpose you're defining, and assigning it to a specific team. That's all great. So we have defined now sets of project documents in the plan for the BIM execution plan or exchange information requirements, and maybe we've assigned these to specific teams. And we've also defined a scope of all of the tasks required. So we know exactly when we're going to hand over a 3D model, what that model is going to include, down to every single piece of the HVAC and even the team that's required to do that. But, and I should mention as well, even down to the information requirements. So if we are wanting to require these information requirements on these air terminals by this mechanical team at this specific point, and even down to defining a specific date, if we wanted to, we could define a specific date, then we can do that. And once we've defined that, okay, that's great. But how do we make sure that people are actually carrying out this work? How do we make sure that people are really doing what they said they were going to? That's where the contract comes in. So if we move from the plan and the scope into the contract, we can now define our first document, our first contract ready for approval, simply by hitting the create button. And I can edit the title page and the teams, etc. But let's just say that we would like to have the BIM execution plan, the scope grid, and maybe all of the details and the information requirements as well for all of the teams. And let's just define this and say, this is our contract document. So when I hit create, this is now going to pull all of that documentation together. And it could have been for any of the filters as well. Maybe I would want to filter this for just the architect's documentation. And maybe if I was including the BIM execution plan, I only want to filter for the published content. And if I wanted to include maybe another PDF from a contract documentation somewhere else, I can just drag and drop it in. And then even as I'm creating this document, I could restrict the access to it to maybe just project managers, or maybe the architect, if I am creating this for them. As I chose the architect, that's their scope that I'm filtering. Maybe I would just want to assign it access for just that team. So let's take a look at the contract. This is the contract that we printed. And if I open that contract, it's a PDF, and we have a nice cover page. We have all of the document details about who's printed it and what's included. So if I wanted to look at anything from the project information with all of the team members, or I wanted to look at the index, and we saw this earlier, so the 3D coordination, start to understand what's included, how we're running the project, everything involved that we had included, even the videos, shortcuts to the videos, etc., out on other platforms. And then included in this as well is the scope. So detailing out who is responsible for what. And if we go all the way through some of this scope, and we start to see this is, in addition, we've got all of the notes and the checklist items and the links out again to the spec that we saw when we were inside of the application. And even going further, we can start to see all of the information requirements in a very concise and nicely printed, nicely formatted manner. But that's just a contract. So how do we make sure that somebody is going to carry that contract out? Usually we ask for a signature. So in the approvals step, we can ask for any of the team members that you've added to the project. We can ask for their approval. I haven't added any team members, so we wouldn't see the team members, but all of these teams, when we brought in the scope, are created automatically for us. So if the architect we did want to add a few team members for the architect, we could just add all of their details in, choose which type of permissions they would need, whether they are viewing, editing, or managing. And then when we go back into the contract, we can start to get their signatures on that contract. I'll show you just from a simplicity perspective. I will ask myself for a signature. So if I ask myself for a signature, it won't send me an email because I was the one requesting it, but it would send somebody else an email if I had requested for their signature. They get an email, you click on the email, you click to review, and I could sign this document, or I could manually sign this document and then accept and adopt. And now my signature is added to the contract. So when I open this contract the next time, you will see this is my signature, and all signatures on this document are affixed as they come in. And at a certain point in time, when everyone has signed, the status will be updated to be approved. Okay, so I've taken us through, let me just backtrack very quickly. I've taken us through the first 3 modules. We looked at using templates that have been curated by over 200 people on the ISO 19650 standards review team. And they were very helpful to create the BIM execution plan quickly, but it could be the EIR, it could be a number of those different documents. We then looked at the AIR and the task information delivery plan, the master information delivery plan in the scope and the responsibility matrices. And once we've folded all of this into a PDF, we can then get somebody's e-signature on that contract. Again, let me pause here and see whether we have some questions before we jump into the project management or the project controlling phase. A lot that we've covered already, I know, but hopefully at a speed that people can follow along to some of it. We've got loads of demos and loads of webinars on the website as well that you should definitely reference to or share with the audience as well.
Okay. Here's one. Thank you, Darwin, for joining us this afternoon. In the responsibility matrix, can I add discipline and elements that are not available in the template?
That's a great question. Yes, you can. And let's take a look at that. There's a nice way of doing that as well. It is a pretty extensive library. So you will find a great deal of content that's already here. But if you're looking for something, you don't find it. So say you say, maybe we want to search for bridges. Oh, if you spell it right. RIDG. So loading bridges and usual bridges with parapets and slabs and abutments, etc. But if you don't find it, absolutely. So if we wanted to add our own, I can simply add items or groups and say that this is new. And inside of here, I can add, so here it's just adopting a simple checklist. But if I added custom items to this, it's simply dragging and dropping and creating your own. I have a pump example that I like to use because it shows off the ability in our algorithm to, let me find, there we go. So I have a picture of a pump here that I'll drag in. And if you want to clean this up, sometimes it could take a little bit of time. Here we have an option to just identify the object. So if I crop and remove the background, we've got essentially some AI that says, I identify the object, I remove the background, and then I'm going to give you a cleaned up image. It's not 100%, but it will really, really solve some big problems for you. So now that pump becomes available. And it's now updated in here. So we can use this pump. And it's something that, makes it really super simple for teams to update. Any other questions?
Nice. Yep, none for now.
Okay.
Let's move forward.
Sounds good. So let's start to look at how we would then, once we've got a contract with a set of requirements, how we would then sequence them, how we would track them, and how we would verify them inside of the application. Let me speed through a couple of slides. We looked at the plan, we looked at the scope, and visually identifying the scope and who's responsible. A larger image of the scope, the contract for really secure signing of that contract. And actually, it should be pointed out, this is a project-based signature workflow that is much more secure because you are logged in users signing a contract that is part of that team rather than it being just an email that you click on and it could be anybody. It really is a lot more solid in a workflow and streamlined approach that's integrated into that project. So let's take a look at the schedule. It's really important if you're going to be modeling things to know what other people are doing as well and when they're going to execute the work. Because if maybe you came in and you placed some duct work, but you placed it before the column layout has been defined, then the column layout could affect your duct work. And obviously if you're modeling it in separate applications and then you pull these things together and you start to identify clashes, that can be a big challenge. You end up with more clashes than you necessarily needed had you have sequenced the work and followed this and then made sure you're only routing the ductwork when you have installed the steel, for example, in that virtual model. So let's take a look at the schedule. I'm going to go to our project dashboard and I'm simply going to, in the settings, I'm going to come in and turn on another module. But while I do that, I'll also point out that depending on what standards you're following, you might not be following the ISO 19650 level of information need. For example, the 17412 standard, which defines purpose and milestones and really the accuracy based on whether it's geometry, documentation, or information related. That's one that's being pushed really, really hard by ourselves. But we also support a bunch of others. So if you're following the AIA level of detail, level of development, level of definition in the UK, for example, all of these LOD scales are available as well. We also should mention as well that the application is, I think, in about 20 something languages overall. So this is a project language, and then in your profile, there's a lot more languages that are available. And so many so that knowing whether to go right to left or left to right on the text is important. So let's turn on the schedule, the track, and the verify modules. So when we are turning these on, we will see them in the top here. Moving to the schedule, the first thing that we'll see is on the right-hand side, we get a list of all of the tasks that are related to that milestone that we have just created. Now, the important thing here to note is this isn't really the BIM manager's role to do the scheduling and the tracking. This is the task team's role. These are the activities that that task team is responsible for, that has been contracted for. They are the ones responsible for saying when they are going to do it. So I'm going to put on a hat for the team of the structural engineer. And you'll see in the background, it filters those tasks. So I've just simply filtered now for just my work. And my activity, my task is to say, I'm going to place the structural columns, and it's going to take me this long, probably less time than that. But these are my tasks and when I need to do them. And we can start to define either just by dragging and dropping them, or by defining an end date, for example, and a start date and an end date, for example. So we can define these and say when they're going to happen or move them around. Let's just drag in a few of these so that we can start to see when we're going to do things. And there we go. So that's number one, pretty easy to say these are my tasks. This is when I'm going to start and finish the work. But also we might want to define that there are specific dependencies. So I need to define the stairs before I put in the exterior walls. For example, it's probably the other way around. I shouldn't do a demo like this and make it so flippant. The other thing that task teams really can benefit from is having a tactile way of knowing which their tasks are. Not always does every single person love to do the digital approach. So in the tasks, let me just remove the filters here for a second so that we can see the rest of them. I'm going to download a set of tasks as cards that we can use in the office and pin up on the wall. And we can sequence and we can start to have really rich conversations about what our tasks are and who's responsible for them. And this is a sheet that we just simply cut out. There's 4 on each sheet. And it really helps the conversations, really helps people understand other people's work. Because if I'm a structural engineer, I've seen a fire hydrant potentially above the ground, but maybe I'm not so familiar with all of the pipes and the valves, and maybe I'm not so familiar with how I'm building certain things, and specifically this pump I'm not familiar with. So seeing it and understanding when somebody refers to a specific object in that conversation, the different ways of, from a structural engineering perspective, describing braces and trusses and welding and bolts, and we've got hangers and etc. This is really very powerful when it becomes visual for other people, other team members. So that's one other aspect to it. But let's go back to simply saying that I am the structural engineer and I've filtered my tasks, and I have defined really quickly when I'm going to execute the work which was the contracted work. So now I can focus on the work that I know that I am supposed to be doing based on the contract. And once I have done that, I know that I'll get paid what I need to get paid. It's a really good carrot and a stick, an opportunity for BIM teams to define that scope so that teams know what they should do, but then allow the teams that are executing on the work to use the same scope to define when they're going to do it. So that's great. When they're going to do it is fun. But what about, let's go back here. What about whether they have actually done it or not, and whether they're focused on the right thing at the right time? So this approach of stop starting and start finishing in a lean Kanban board is the track module. And what we'll see here is the same tasks that we had in the scope that we contracted for are the same tasks that we just scheduled into a sequence. And they are the same cards that are now represented in the track page so that we can show people whether we are ready or not ready. And this whole principle ties in with the ISO 19650 workflow, because having people sharing the right information at the right time and having people aware of when they can start their activities is all in that lean philosophy of having a purpose for your work and being able to carry out work and knowing who is consulted, who is responsible, who is informed. Making that all automated through notifications. When somebody drags and drops and says, my work is ready, the manager doesn't have to chase them and keep on asking, hey, is that ready yet? Can you give me an update on progress? All of this is automated. So let's take a look and move on to the track page. The one key thing that you'll see as well is that this filter that I had on the top left is also present here. So I automatically just see the tasks that are my tasks as I go through all of these three modules here. If I'm working on these tasks and I know that specific team members are maybe working on some, I can open the task and even assign it to a specific team member. Because I'm the only person on this project at the moment, I can simply check myself. But when I've checked out a task and I say that it's ready for review, it's as simple as just dragging and dropping. And I might have wanted to check off these items on the checklist. So you can see these are the things that I needed to do before I dragged and dropped it. Okay, great. Everything is tracked. Everything is managed. So you can see a full history of what is happening on this task. I can also mention my team members and start communicating around this task. I could even take a copy of the link directly to this card and send it to somebody else so they know exactly what I'm talking about and be able to comment on that same task as well. All of these actions are also tracked in the notification engine. So you can see in the project feed, everything that we've done since we started is tracked. And then if somebody else moves this card that is my card, I will be told about it in my notifications. So right now, nobody else is working on the project, but it's fully collaborative and you can have as many people working on this as you like at the same time. And if somebody moves my card, for example, I would see that as an update. So let's say the concrete stairs are now ready and maybe the wall foundations, I'm going to claim this one as well. This will be my task. I'm saying that they are now both done. The next step, if we jump back to the slides, after tracking and making sure that we've updated the progress, is sharing the model, because we've created this wonderful model and we've said that it's ready for review. We really want to simplify that compliance process so that teams can deliver a model connected to the original scoping requirements and make sure that everyone knows what is ready for use. Because using a model that has not gone through this workflow and it hasn't been verified, maybe using it for estimating when you are not quite ready and it's going to give you the wrong quantities, or using it for coordination and you end up with false clashes or a bunch of unnecessary clashes that are maybe not even relevant after the models are updated. So really, really powerful to verify first before you go through that workflow. So we've got Great example here. There's the stairs that we talked about. And we can go through some of these examples to make sure that that model has been completed. So it's back to the software. We're looking at the track page right now, but these two tasks, they are in the ready for review column. We should mention as well, you can add as many columns as you like and define the color for these. Let's just show this so that you can see it in an example. Let's put a bright orange on, and maybe we can attach the columns to this one as well. And let's call this procurement or procured as an example. Let's move on to the verify. And wherever we put these models, it doesn't matter. If you want to, you can just simply drag and drop a model into the browser. And it could be one of about 80 different file formats, ranging from SketchUp through IFC to Revit files to Navisworks files, etc. Anything that you just drag and drop in the browser will be available only for the people that you provide access. Or if you're working on a BIM 360 or the Autodesk Construction Cloud, you can connect in directly to those models. I'm going to do this just because I know that I have an access to a BIM 360 project. And I'm going to sign in and allow. It's a double handshake, so you do actually have to add the app to your account on Autodesk's side so that it connects up, and it allows you to actually connect into the projects that you are allowing them to have access to. If I select the project, I can then say which file folders and pick out which folders and which elements, which models I'm actually going to submit. So still wearing my structural engineer's hat, I have created a structural model in Revit, and I'm going to connect that now because that is the model that I am wanting to say that I have now created. So you can see I've got two tasks here that are ready to be linked up to the elements that I'm delivering. They were based on the contract, and then something that's procured. And this one here, we were just going to show that so that we could see the elements of in a certain color. So let me just show you how easy it is to say that's these, and then let's highlight these. That's these, and then the concrete stairs. And you can use the tree as well. So just by selecting things in the tree, you can see these stairs are these stairs. And actually, on the left-hand side, I'm also now going to filter just for what is ready for review. So pretty quickly, and I went through that very quickly, but what we did was connected up a model, and all of the different versions that are stored on BIM 360 came through. And anytime you update a version on BIM 360, it will update inside of Plannerly as well. We have access not just to the versions, but also the views. So if we are even looking at the 2D views that have been created, we can start to understand and identify these, and even see the connection between the 2D and the 3D as well. So you can start to see these connections in the 2D drawings as well as the 3D model. So we've got versions, the views, and the tree being able to turn everything off, so show floors, show nice Plannerly sign on the wall, be able to turn on the walls, etc., and understand this model, take cross sections through it, do measurements, everything that you would want to. Also, obviously, all of the properties related to every single element inside of this project as well. Let me close the right-hand panel with where our models sit, and then show all again. Some cool features to be able to. So let me change hats again. So I've been the planner, the BIM manager, as I was defining the plan, the scope, and the contract. I was then the structural engineer and sequencing my work and then saying when it was ready. I'm now going to take that hat back off and put my BIM manager's hat back on, where I'm going to come in and start verifying. I can see that this model has been submitted, and I can simply, as a BIM manager, click an item, see what's being linked and what's being delivered under that requirement, and then maybe look at certain requirements, go through this model, interrogate very, very quickly, very easily. But maybe we also want to have a look at the detail behind this task and see what's related. What maybe there's nothing else related, so maybe this is good. Maybe we just wanted geometry for this item. So I'm now going to verify this task, and it's quite cool to show the status of these tasks at the same time. So let's turn on the status. So you can see here, these are now green. The tasks that have been verified are now green. You can see the other elements are in the procurement color, and then the stairs are shown in blue because they are ready for review, the task status. Some cool tricks that we can use, instead of just looking at the stairs and saying, okay, it looks like they're stairs, there are many things that we might want to or might have to do. So on the left-hand side, we can see there were certain items in the checklist. So check position of any cast-in accessories, check minimum width clearances, check all stairs connect to floors. And I like to see here the floors. So now we can see the floors. I don't need to tell you guys, I'm sure, how to start to interrogate a model, but these are some of those tricks to be able to identify, well, this stair is obviously not meeting the floor, and we might want to reject this, and we might want to actually have a status of fixes. I might want to open this card and start mentioning people and saying, this is what needs to be fixed. Need to assign it to a specific team member, another team member, for example, and go through that workflow. In this case, I think we're just going to say, oh, actually another one as well. Maybe I want to compare these stairs. So if I click on these stairs, a cool feature is the clustering feature. And now by clustering, I can move those stairs all together and start to interrogate them or compare them as they are in now outside of the building. So I can see the rest of the building, see the stairs outside, throw them back in, and maybe I want to cluster all of the objects in the building. Once I've maybe verified all of these tasks and just want to have some fun, I can then cluster everything in the building and start to see them in groups. And maybe I want to look at the structural columns on their own so that we can see, let's pivot around this point, and so that we can see, are any of these columns too long? Do they go over more than one story in the building? No, they don't, so we're all good. Going through that whole workflow and verifying that the work has been completed in accordance with the original contract is pretty important before you go ahead and release this model. So on the right-hand side, we can say that this model version 2 that we're looking at right now, we are ready to publish it and start to authorize its use, whether it's authorized for use inside of BIM 360 or other coordination workflows, or maybe for estimating, for example. And now that model will have a link to download, and anybody that has access through Plannerly can get access to those models that you provide them. This one can only be downloaded when it's published. So we've covered a huge amount. I'm going to have a quick recap through the workflow, and then maybe we'll have a bunch of questions as well. In summary, do we have questions that we should cover now, or should I summarize a few of these modules and then come back?
We have a question this time from, flashing it to you.
Okay, in our project, part of the contract requirements is to submit the BEP live document regularly every 3 months for review in Aconex. Can the platform be integrated with Aconex? So we don't have a direct integration, but you can very easily tie in with a link to the live plan. So I would suggest that, yeah, you can route that through Aconex through Aconex with a link to the published document, or you could go even one step further and link it directly to the live environment as well. So it's a couple of different options, and it's also hyperlinked in between as well.
Awesome. Another question?
In the schedule, how can I group the tasks by levels or buildings and zones if the project has multiple buildings and zones? There's about 5 ways of doing it. They're not the optimum answer. but one of them would be a good enough solution today before we have locations. So location-based management is something that we would like to add. Right now, there are a few different ways. One way in the scope is to duplicate per location. So for example, the structural work, if that was done in a series of different locations, you would simply, let's edit this and call this floor 1. Actually, some of the ways that teams are doing it are putting it in the code. And now when I copy this, it's actually going to duplicate it down. So if I turn on the codes, you can see here, it's got RM because it's a responsibility matrix at the top, but let's just get rid of that for the sake of this. So now you can see floor 1 structural, and you've got floor 1, floor, and then if we wanted to, we would just duplicate this one, and it would create us that set of tasks to track in floor 2, for example. So we would just edit this one here and say this is floor 2, and you would have each of these being in specific locations. So you would just simply have a folder that would then, so we do that and show you this. So we've got a folder for all of floor 1, folder for floor 2, and everything is named and coded like that. Another way of doing it would be in the track module, where you can use these as locations as well. So you could use this as floor 1, and then floor 2, and so on and so forth. It's filtering them out at the moment. Another way of doing it is to use the checklist as locations. So inside of here, it's probably a bad example. Let's use the columns as an example, where we have floor 1, and then floor 2, and so on. So you end up with a checklist inside of each of these for each of those locations. And there's a couple of others as well. So if you're really interested in that answer, then let's chat more, because we're looking to solve it in an even better way than that series of different answers as well.
Okay. I think this is his last question.
What if, for example, I'm using Bentley AECO Sim or ArchiCAD as authoring tool? So we implement IFC, and that's really the protocol of translation between lots of different applications. So exporting as IFC and ingesting that inside of Planoly. But integrations, look out for integrations, because Aconex and obviously the rest of the tool sets that you mentioned are very important to us, and we would love to put more integration emphasis and make it easier.
Yep, excited for that too. Okay. Yep, go ahead, Clive.
So let's summarize a lot of what we've just covered in hopefully, let's try 5 minutes. First of all, how do we create it? Well, we saw how you can create a new project. And when you've created a new project, the first thing that you see is the set of templates that have been curated by this team around the world. Pick the tiles for the documents that you want to create. In this example, we've got the EIR, BEP, Appointment Documents, RACI charts. Each document becomes a tab. And then when you wanting to complete this from a project perspective, just simply filling in from a template and then starting to share those sections allows other team members to come in, and then they would be able to comment. So when you are building this workflow, it's not just about the text-based content, but also the detailed requirements from an assets perspective. And this is an automated register of requirements potentially for your assets, making it really simple. There was a question earlier about working with owners. So in the scope module, this is where you would create the information requirements and understand which assets those information requirements are necessary on. Here is where we would then start to assign those information requirements. So you can start to see there are potentially IFC requirements or different warranty or parameters that are required, or whether it's inside of the model or whether it's linked to external sources. being able to define that early with the owner is really, really powerful, creating those information requirements. And then we didn't do this, but creating the project details, filling in those details, and then also the other systems that you use, collecting those all in the same place using what we call quick links along the quick links bar for maybe using a Zoom or using BIM 360 or Procore or something like that that you use in your tool set at the moment. Then as we build in more teams, another feature that we didn't go into is building prospective teams, so teams that are not yet part of the project teams, and they would see things in a slightly different way because they're restricted, but you need to add them so that they have a restricted access and they can start to respond, so that through that bid process, through that procurement process, the appointment process, the person bidding on this is replying to this. So information management competency, they're adding their proof of competency with their CV, their resume, and they're sharing it back. So they're answering these questions. And as they get the answers, the owner or the appointing party gets the answers, then you're having comments and questions and back and forth between the team that is bidding for the work and the team that is awarding the work before these sections get published and go through that workflow. We can see that certain tabs get assigned to certain parties, certain teams, and this two-way commenting process is really powerful because it's in place rather than sending an email and disconnected from the rest of the workflow. Once we have appointed a team, we would want to then start to assign some of these teams, and simply just by saying, I'm going to make them a project team, provides them access to more of the content and more of the modules, and really starts to involve them as part of their team, as part of the project team. Once we've defined and we've agreed what the documents say and make sure that what we need from an asset perspective is detailed out in the asset requirements, making sure that all of the information requirements are defined, documentation, geometry, etc., all of that. How do we make it official? Well, we need to create a contract, and that is really simple, and it's filtered per appointment. So if you think about, instead of creating all of these separate documents, you create one database full of the content and then use filters to print an individual contract agreement for just potentially the architect. And then you would start to involve the right signatories to sign the document and also have access to it. So you can restrict access and restrict or ask for certain signatures on the document. Once you get a request, you can start to see these requests form into a signature. And as those signatures come in, the document becomes approved and locked, and now a fully required and secure contract. But once we've got that contract, how do we then follow through on it? How do we make sure that what we contracted for actually gets done? Well, we have the verification and validation workflow, not just inside of using Plannerly, but you can export the data as well in an Excel format and use that in Power BI and Celebri and some other model checking tools. But using Plannerly, you can drag and drop one of 80 different file formats directly into the browser and start to see visually what parts of the model are done, what parts need fixing, maybe which parts are behind. We've got some more resources if you are interested in learning more. One key thing is that there are 6 modules, but you can get started with one, and maybe you won't need the others at all, or you might not need them until your next project. A lot of people just start with the basics and define the plan and the scope. And there is a basics course online. If you go to the app as well, it's actually in, let me pull it up here. It's in the question mark in the app, in the header, a series of training videos, which are the Smart Lean Bim Basics course.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
Siri's listening to me. The Smart Lean Bim Basics course are essentially 1-minute videos talking through a specific topic and really helping you understand the basics of what you can do with even just the first couple of modules. If you're really digging in and you want to learn more and you want to get your company involved, there are masterclasses and there's a lot more online work and a lot of great webinars that you can join. Lots of content that is based on ISO 19650. The webinar series that is ongoing right now. Join teams around the world and you can start to really understand from the basics and some of the things that we've covered down to really detailed tender response workflow, understanding the appointment process, understanding the mobilization and responsibility matrices, and et cetera, et cetera. So that is plan. Oh, and some people say some really nice things about what we're doing, and we've got some really great partners around the world that we couldn't do this without. And I should also mention them. Seem like I'm jumping around quite a lot. There's a map here on the partner map. Check them out. They are all around the world. They are BIM consultants and also BIM educators in university programs and other education BIM management programs around the world. And you'll have different accreditations and different localizations and also involvement in the templates teams. This is a really, really strong network of teams around the world as well. So a couple of different resources that we absolutely couldn't do this without. So that is Plannerly. Hopefully, how have I done on time?
Right on time.
Right on time. Okay, good stuff. So lots to think about, but being able to simplify the ISO 19650 workflow, provide templates, and a lot of drag and drop features to make it easy for teams to collaborate. That's really what we focus on, and planning early. So plan early using Plannerly. That's the advert.
Okay, so once more, please head over to plannerly.com for more information. Okay, probably I guess I don't know if if this is a question or this is a question offline, but yeah, we're willing to support Clive in bringing Plannerly into the classroom. So yep.
Fantastic.
So I guess there's no once more, we're open for questions. But after this, you're free to connect with. Let me get the link. Let me flash the link for Plannerly. Okay, so yep, feel free to contact. Are they free to contact or to connect with you in LinkedIn, Clive?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we try to share a lot on LinkedIn, and you'll see videos, but also check out our YouTube channel as well. And there's a lot of really good content on there.
Yeah. For education, this is this free or does the schools have to purchase?
It's free for education. So if you go onto the site and hit the education, you'll see a way that teams can understand what the program is and then register their interest and even see how some other university programs around the world are implementing it. And it's all free for any BIM management education program.
Okay, so yep. If there's no more question, once more, please don't leave the the stage, Clive. Let me finish this live stream. For now, but of course, once more, thank you, everyone, for those who joined us this afternoon. And this is actually one of the sad things with the Philippines right now. Even a lot of our AEC professionals are here in the Philippines are not familiar with BIM. Okay, so that's what we are currently focusing in addition, Clive,
Mm-hmm.
to have everyone starting out from schools, the BIM curriculum to be in all academic institutions, and that 19650, a lot of our countrymen here are not familiar with that, and we are being left out by our neighboring countries like Vietnam, we have no BIM guidelines like the one in ISO
Hmm.
spearheaded by the government. So that's what we are trying ourselves as much as we can to
Hmm.
have that organized, a BIM guideline, yeah, similar to ISO
Hmm.
from the Philippines. So we're doing our best to unite all professionals, all industries. So
We actually help standards bodies to house and collaborate their standards on Plannerly as well, so that they can provide them for free to their users. So that's actually something that if the right teams would like to get in touch, if that's something you're managing, then let us know and we'll set you up with an environment so you can collaborate on your standards. And then when you're ready to release them, you just publish them, and then they go to the world, so they'll be available. And,
yeah.
and one resource that I just to point you towards. Let's see if we have. This is, yeah, I think. Let's see what the web link is. You probably find it. Just search for ISO 19650 PDF. Here there is a really simple. Oh, he says. There we go. So if I open this, you can download this and also a whole bunch of other tools that are these individual building blocks. And it walks through in a really simple way the ISO process, the ISO 19650 workflow. So you've got 3 swim lanes: the appointing party. So this is the client, the lead appointed party, the main team that is responsible for coordinating all of the task teams, all of the appointed parties. And each swim lane shows generally what documents people are responsible for at what point in time. So really key early on is to appoint the information management function, which is really a person, a role. Usually for a project, it can obviously be a team, but depending on the size of the project. And it's their role and responsibility to create the tender documents, which are the bid documents, the exchange information requirements, which are made up of the organizational, so strategic, understanding what the project specific requirements are, and then the asset requirements to come out of the other end that are required from an O&M perspective, or some kind of maintenance system that the owner is running. This invitation to tender has a series of tender responses. So there's a few of these that get input from the task teams, and that generally is a pre-appointment BIM execution plan, and roll in an understanding of how they're going to get started and what the risks are. This is the tender response for for the teams that are bidding on the work. At the point in time that a lead appointed party is selected, a post-appointment BIM execution plan is developed, which generally means it's where the rubber meets the road. This is more about the qualifications of the team, the capability and capacity. This is more about the real how it's going to happen on the project. That is accompanied by the responsibility matrix and the master information and task information delivery plans. This here is really in the scope grid. This is where you use the scope module to define all of these requirements as tasks, and that's what gets appointment. That's what gets appointed. So really, there's more to it in using the other modules. But if I was to just outline these steps here as being really key in identifying the important parts of the ISO 19650 workflow, and that diagram, along with a bunch of other downloadable PDFs for each of these documents, each of these parts of the workflow, they're all available on the app, so that you can quickly use them in a presentation, for example.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, I think Clive has a very large perspective as well when it comes to BIM worldwide. So, yep, this is a question from Darwin.
Uh, how mature are we in terms of BIM implementation? When we say we, are we talking about we as the world at the moment on what we're getting out of BIM? Are we talking about the Philippines? Are we talking about and so the second part of the question is, are we still in transition stage from conventional to digital? I think the answer to that is yes, we are. I think that generally there are only real pockets of peak performance. And one of the challenges in our industry is we bring together multiple companies for individual projects, and they might do some amazing things, but then at the end of the project, they all go away and work on other projects and have to gel with new teams. And there are potentially different processes in place on those projects. The real, I stressed it early on, but the real importance of the ISO 19650 workflow is to help them know that the next project they go on to is going to follow similar, if not the same processes. So we as the world, we're scratching the surface. Think about, so we started with these 2D drawings, and anytime you needed some information, you needed to manually do something. You wanted to take quantities off of that drawing, you have to measure it. You want to understand something in relation to another schedule somewhere else, you have to look at one thing, go to another. If you want to understand what the elevation is, you have to look at where the section is and you go to the elevation. So there's a whole kind of interpretation on a 2D drawing. That's just for understanding those simple things. Flip that into using a 3D model, and suddenly you have information, structured information, potentially at your fingertips. And at a press of a button, you can schedule off of the quantities that can directly impact a cost. And that could be tied in with the schedule so that it understands the cash flow. And that could be tied into the bank payments and your interest rate related to the bond. That whole thing can be driven from a 3D model if it's structured and if it's planned early and if that sequence is actually put together. But are we there yet as the world? No, we're just scratching the surface on what is possible, what can be possible with this. So it's an exciting time, but everyone, it's the education, because if everyone understands what's possible, then it starts to become more probable and it starts to become actually a real life occurrence. So it's lots of exciting times ahead with BIM, more automation, more integrations, and more power from using the information.
Okay, so yep. Once more, I think there's no question for now. And please don't leave the stage. Let me finish this live with a few videos. Thank you as well. Thank you as well, Darwin. So yep. That's one of the sad things as well. Most of our professionals here in the Philippines who are familiar with BIM, most of them are overseas. Like Darwin is currently in Hong Kong right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it's a breeding ground of labor, and then they go out of the country serving various BIM companies. Yep. Once more, thank you so much, Clive,
Thank
for
you. Thank
being
you.
a
I appreciate it.
blessing. And very insightful. Just what I've mentioned by Sir Psycho. And hoping to see you once more, probably Clive, next year, because we bring in thousands of people to BIM with students annually. So
Mhm.
definitely they should be blessed as well to hear your message and advocacy once they enter college or something like that.
We love
So
sharing. We love sharing. Thank you for sharing your audience. And if there are any follow-ups that people would reach out directly to myself or a team member, and the in-app chat or the on website chat, we love to talk about BIM in general as well.
okay, yeah. So in Tagalog, maraming salamat. Can you say that for us? Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat.
Yes,
Salamat.
yes. That's that's thank you. And sana po nakatulong kami. I hope Clive and I and the rest of the BIM Philippines community have been very helpful and insightful. Hoping we have opened some doors or thoughts in your minds on why BIM is very important to be implemented. And yep, join us in BIM Philippines. Please check out plannerly.com and hoping to see you guys on our next live stream training with BIM Philippines. And if you have a message or an advocacy like live, we're inviting you to be our next sharer. We call that sharer because we're an advocate of sharing knowledge. Inviting you to be our next sharer. Let's be a blessing to everyone, be helpful, and let's move humanity forward with design technologies and BIM. So once more, thank you everyone. Thank you, Clive.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take care,
and
everyone.
see you also. So I'll be leaving you with this few videos, and yeah, see you again next time. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening to the person in other parts of the world. Okay, thank you
Good
so
morning,
much.
good
Bye bye.
afternoon. Bye.
Aligning expectations in our industry can be a challenge. Your plan module helps teams define and agree on project standards and processes. Use built-in editing, commenting, and sharing to agree and publish your contracts. Your scope module helps teams collaboratively define visual project scopes. Use industry standards or drag from the built-in library to define your own. Your schedule module helps teams prioritize their own assignments and easily coordinate with others. Your track module makes managing tasks simple. Filter your own work and just drag and drop to update progress. Your verify module connects contract requirements to the 3D model. Now, in the same location, you can review and verify against the original requirements before publishing models for authorized use. Collaborate using any of the 5 modules, reduce waste, and finally achieve your BIM goals. And remember, don't plan late. Plan early. Plannerly